Anyway, yeah, thank you for joining. First question, because it's more recent. So, just congratulations on the IVOR Novello Award for Mario and Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope a couple of months
Yep.
ago.
Yeah, that
Congrats
was
on that.
amazing. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was spectacular.
is there any reason that particular award was particularly important to you, or was it you just you like getting any awards, or
No, but I mean, the Ivy Novellas is really it's different to everything else. It's like it's very about the craft of songwriting
yeah,
and composing. That's the focus, right? It's not on no, it's not it's on the purely on the music.
yeah,
So and there's only about 1,000 people there, so to the event, and they don't let the speeches get filmed because the people are effing and blinding and like telling all the true stories, which you don't get that on the BAFTAs or the Emmys or whatever. So it's very
okay,
different. And I didn't really realize that till I got there.
hmm.
People told me that, but everyone told me it's a big deal. You won't get it till you get there, and I did get it when I got there. And like it was super humbling to get there. And I mean, and they took it, and the judges done really seriously that it's not like a quick just vote for your friends thing. It's like they all analyze the music, they talk about it for weeks
Yeah.
on end. It's like they're really going into real depth. It's all about the composing. So that was fantastic. Yeah.
Does it give you a kudos for like other jobs as well? Like if you want to get in films and things like that, so
Well, I
more
don't know. I
recognised.
mean, it's only been a few weeks, so let's see. I keep my fingers crossed. You never know, do you?
All right, okay. Well, on from that, and I know it's slightly out of order, but did you want to give a quick sort of intro to who you are and everything like that? I'll let you speak for yourself. Just a quick one before we get into some questions.
Well, I'm Grant Kirkhope. I'm a composer. I've worked on since 1995. Done, I don't know, Banjo Kazooie, GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, Donkey Kong, Kings of Amalur, Mario plus Rabbids, a bit of Minecraft, bit of World of Warcraft, King's Daughter with Piers Brosnan and William Hurt, and some of them indie movies and stuff like that.
Okay, cool. First question I've got, and hopefully I'll surprise you with a couple of these. I'm just trying to get something you might not have been asked before. The first
All
one,
right.
which I'm pretty sure you probably have been asked before, is around dynamic music. So the first question would be, like the parts in Banjo Kazooie where the track changes when you move around the map and stuff like that. So what brought that on? Was that something that was your idea, or was that like a creative director decision?
So we nicked that. So like in the early LucasArts games, they had that iMuse system,
Hmm.
and in particular it was in Monkey Island,
Yeah.
Secret Monkey Island. So like and Tim Stamper and Greg Mills, Tim Stamper was one of the bosses of the company, and Greg was the head of the game. Loved those games, and so they kind of made me play them when I got
Okay.
there.
So
And
it's a
yeah,
conscious
yeah.
decision.
So
Yeah.
yes, totally. I mean, the games are fantastic, but as you wander around, the music would change and morph to different things. So they said we want to get
Yeah.
that into our game, and like I didn't really know how to do it, so I kind of had to made a best guess, and it turned out right in the end. But it was we just stole the idea from them.
So was it like a reverse engineering thing? You didn't have iMuse the software then. You just had to sort of try and listen to it and copy what they were doing, kind of thing. Or
Yeah, because iMuse is FM synthesis, right? So it's not actually not playing samples.
oh,
It's just
okay.
playing. It's like a little mini synth on the sound card. So we actually use samples to do it. So, but we just kind of figured out. I'm sure what we did was comparable.
Yeah.
I just don't know what they actually did. But it's just when you get a MIDI file. A MIDI file's got 16 tracks, right?
Yeah.
So I'd write different versions of the area we were in into the MIDI file. So 4 tracks for that bit, 3 tracks for that bit, 2 tracks until it got to 16. And then I just crossfade. So say so you're playing tracks 2, 3, and 4 for that bit. And as you go, we draw circles under the floor in the level that you can't see. So when you banjo one then across the circle, the circle perimeter, it would trigger to say, right, you need to switch from 2, 3, and 4 to 5, 6, and 7, and it would just crossfade. It would just slowly turn them down and slowly turn those up, and that's how it
Okay.
worked.
That's clever, that. So is that, I mean, I know that nowadays with this sort of the dynamic music's more like based off situations like in boss fights and stuff like that. But something like Kingdoms of Amalur, which you mentioned before, I think that features. So is that something that got easier to do as time got on, or was it something that you didn't let to think about as much because it was something done by the programmers? I presume you had to write more music for that kind of stuff, or
So it wasn't really any of that channel fading in Kings and Amalur. So it was more or less about boss would pop up and a bit of music would
yeah.
play. It wasn't. There's no kind of morphing going on.
Oh,
But
okay.
like in ukulele, there is morphing going on. So, but it's different now because you just got a stereo file like a
Yeah.
like a CD, like a normal file. So you just make umpteen stereo files. You'd have this arrangement when that arrangement and that arrangement and that arrangement, and they'd be all the same length. And then the programmer, as you would go along, you'd have to track. So if you're playing this main track here and you've got 4 other tracks below it, as the main track's playing, you're tracking the other tracks as well virtually, so they're not playing.
Oh,
And
okay.
then when you want to switch, it just goes like it just switches to those two, you know, and then so you got multiple stereo streams at any one time. But obviously, you know, the minute you start to crossfade two stereo streams, it instantly doubles the processing time, right?
Yeah.
So you got to make sure that you got the processing time. I mean, you know, these days the consoles are powerful, so it's not as much of an issue, but it's still it's a bit more pain in the ass to do. I feel like in the old MIDI days it was a lot easier. I feel like these days it's a little bit harder to do, but it's still possible. But you are just manipulating lots and lots of audio streams to do that.
Okay, it's really interesting because I was a PlayStation kid, right? So I got into your music more recently because a mate of mine had like a cultural exchange because he's the same age as me and he had the N64. So we sort of like listened to stuff, played through Banjo Kazooie for a bit. And what's interesting about something like that, like it loads instantly. So when you know with the PlayStation 1, which came out of the same sort of time, obviously a lot of the time, especially you know kids don't take care of the discs and stuff like that, the disc would scratch and you'd get bits where it would jutter and it wouldn't work. Whereas now it's even with something, even on the N64 when you boot it up, yeah, sometimes it takes a while to start the game, but it's got that level of quality where it's actually seamless and it really sticks out. You know, makes it age better as well. I think really, but
yeah, but I mean, you think about it, that system is just a ROM, right?
Yeah,
you know, and so it's instant access, and so we've kind of gone. It's a solid state drive, really, a little tiny.
yeah,
So like we've just gone full circle now. So now we're back to solid state drives,
exactly.
and like you know, on the Switch, for instance, just a little solid state thing you plug into your Switch, and that's instant access as well. So you know, it's exactly the same.
Brilliant, yeah. So more on Kingdoms. I keep pronouncing that wrong.
I
Kingdoms of
can't say it
Amalur.
either. I
No,
haven't
it's
got
yeah,
that, yeah.
yeah. Kingdoms of Amalur stuff because I mentioned that doesn't seem to come up as much in interviews with you and stuff like that. So, am I right in saying that that's the main influence for that was Prisoner of Azkaban soundtrack?
Well, it was kind of the first three Harry Potters.
First three, the
So
John Williams.
yeah, and so like that was a kind of a milestone in my career in my head. It may not be for anybody else, but it was for me because it was the first time I kind of thought, right, if I need to really prove to myself I can write something this big,
Yeah,
you know, this kind of big orchestral scale, and it was all fully orchestra, the whole thing, even the DLC was all live. So apart from maybe one or two pieces that I just missed at the end, and so it was for me it was a big deal to try and see if I could do it. It was like now's the time to show yourself if you do it or you can't. And so the first thing that Peter wrote that I got into that was called Baylor, one of the bosses in the thing. And that's like the first time I thought, can I really write something? You know, I'm not saying I'm as good as John Williams. I'm nowhere near as good as John Williams, but in my mind, can I write something of that ilk? You know,
yeah.
can I understand what he does and try to do it myself? And so I literally spent. I mean, I worked at that game for 4 years on and off. Well, no, it's 4 years on, really. And I mean, and like I literally had the first three soundtracks from Harry Potter in my car, and I listened to those every day. And my wife, my wife and kids to distraction. I mean, it's no exaggeration. I listened to that stuff back to back every day.
Was that so? Were there any particular ones that stuck out? I was presumably just thinking about in the car. Could you tell? Did you own in on anything particularly to think, right, I'm going to steal that bit or pinch that bit or anything like that? Or was it just a case of just having it in by osmosis and then going into the writing room and doing that? Was there anything?
Yeah, I tried to steal what I could understand.
Yeah,
you know, I can't understand all of it. You know, but I mean, I feel like it was a bit like my textbook. You know, I listen to it, but I've got a good set of ears, so I can pick things. I mean, obviously I'm classically trained and I can read music and all the rest of it, but I don't know if that helps me. But
right.
but I've got a good set of ears, so I can pick up what's going on and I can understand stuff. So I started to understand some of the ways you use some of his chord sequences, some of the ways that he writes in, you know, take a chord and play a melody with the chord, or just like all three notes all the time, as opposed to try to harmonize. You know, that was a bit. It's not strictly harmonic, but it sounds amazing. So like what's a good example of that?
Harry's Wondrous World.
It's in that.
Something
It's
like
part
that.
of the. It's all over the place actually in the movies, in the ones that he did, and so that was like, oh, that's, you know, every day you'd hear something that's like, oh, that's interesting, or, you know, so I just tried my best to try and, you know, and I kind of felt like after writing that first Baylor piece, I was like, you know what, I think I can do this. And that's the first time I thought, you know, because I've always thought I want to have a crack at movies, right? And I kind of thought, if I ever got that far and got handed a gigantic project, could I do it? And that was always in the back of my mind. And I feel like when I did Kings of Amalur, I proved to myself, well, at least to myself, that I thought I could do it.
It's like your template for that sort of stuff. Then I guess that soundtrack.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I could handle, because I've spent, 4 years at music college, in Manchester, at the Royal College of Music. So I've sat in orchestra lots of times. So I knew what orchestra sounded like. I
Yeah,
know what all the sections do. Some people, a lot of composers have trouble using the woodwinds because they don't really know what they do.
yeah.
So that was, for me, that wasn't an issue because I know what everything does in the orchestra. So I feel like it just took me to apply that knowledge I'd kind of picked up in my ears over the years and to actually writing like that.
Did that give you the edge then? Because don't think it was the first game you did that had an orchestra in it, was it? Or it might have been. I might be wrong there, but it's
No, I did. Vivi Pinata was the first
right.
one
I
I
had
did.
orchestra as well.
Yeah,
Okay,
but that was
so
very much that's more of a sedate soundtrack. So not really. I mean, very tuneful and
hmm.
I guess quite classical, but not that impactful John Williamsy thing.
Do you have to sort of like direct the orchestra on what to do then? Obviously, I'm not like as a conductor, but like a sort of do you write the music and then give it to them and sit there and listen to them play, or is it a case of getting actively involved in who does what and that kind of thing?
So when I write my they call it a MIDI mock-up, right? So
Yeah.
I use these big sample libraries. So like the Spitfire BBC Symphony Orchestra I'm using right now, and it's got all the sections of the orchestra and it's got all the articulation. So my Pro Tools session looks like an orchestra, a parts page. So like piccolo, flute,
Mm.
oboe, clarinet. It's in score order. So when it got so it was all look like that, and so then I'd send it to the orchestra to turn it into actual music parts because
Okay.
I haven't really got the time to do that. It would be,
Yeah.
and like I haven't done it for such a. It would take me a while to get back into. I mean, I could do it, but it would take me a while.
Because it's like one of
So
those very typical day after day jobs you've got to be able to keep doing to stay good at, I
yeah,
guess. Yeah.
yeah, and I feel like it's a bit like an admin job in some respects.
Yeah.
I mean, composers who don't know how that all works will have a very bare thing that the orchestrators turn into a very big thing. When they get my stuff, it more or less sounds exactly as I gave it to them.
Mm.
So the MIDI files that I give them that got all the note information in it, when they turn it into actual orchestra parts, there's very little difference, if anything. And I send them an MP3 as well. So and then they turn it into parts.
Okay.
It would get sent to the recording studio. They'd print all the parts, and then some people like to conduct. I like to sit in the control room because I feel like if I'm conducting, I might miss something. So I like to sit in the control room and listen to it and go, bar 4, can you change that, bar 6, whatever. So usually I hire a conductor to do it as well.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So when you talk about MIDI, I think it's MIDI mock-ups. Do you sort of like play them on like a MIDI keyboard, or do you do like a physical demo with a guitar or something like that first to sort of play something when you're writing it, or is it straight into the machine?
So I go straight to the machine with a keyboard. So I'll have a sample library loaded up. I've got an orchestral template that contains all the into the orchestra, and I'll just play straight into the way it's going to sound. So I don't do like I'm a terrible pianist, right? So I couldn't possibly ever play any of my music on a piano. I couldn't do it, but not with two hands. One hand, maybe if I'm lucky. I'm a terrible. So like I have to literally, go to the clarinet and play the clarinet, and then go to the oboe and play the oboe in, and then go to the bassoons and play the oboe in. Like do it, I build it up bit by bit by bit to get, and I do it in sections. Which some people like to do like a big arc and finish the piece off and then color it in. I like to do section, finish it, section, finish it, section, finish it. I don't know if that's bad. That's the way I've always done it.
Like bricklaying, basically. So you sort of like pick the.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So do you hear the finished piece in your head, or do you just sort of put in little bits and then see what it seems like at the end of a piece? So like a big piece of music like Kings of Amalur, do you like go, right, this is what I wanted to sound like, and then try and aim for that, or do you just layer it, I guess?
Layer it up. Yeah, so I don't think like that. So like I'll do the section. I'll start with a melody or a set of chords, and then that's the meat and potatoes of it, right? So you got your melody, the bit you want to tune, you want to use, the chords you want to use, or whatever, and then I color it in. I had a percussion, I had a string part, I had an oboe part, and so to kind of color it all in, then go to the next bit and start again.
Okay, that's interesting. So I mean, I don't think it's specific to Kings of Amalur, because I noticed in that soundtrack you've got I think it's the main theme plays quite a bit, and I think it's probably quite a standard thing. But when you get like an enemy coming on, or a boss or something like that, you get a very percussive sort of timpani sound. So is that the start to tie in with the sort of leitmotif thing of like giving you the sort of drilling in what's happening on the screen? Is that the approach that you took with that in terms of repetitive stuff coming up?
Yeah, no, I think it's important. I think in movies, it's great to have a theme you can latch onto. Like, when you hear the Force theme in Star Wars, you know what's going on. You hear Darth Vader's theme, you know what's going on, right? So I do like, you don't always get the chance to do that in games, because lots of times you're writing fresh music for every new level, right? But in Kings of Amalur, I feel like the theme does kind of get through a lot of it. I made sure that in every section of the game that theme was somewhere. You know, and so, and the percussive part of it, I just think that's just me trying to make it sound exciting. You know,
That's
I feel
okay.
like, you know, I'm making sure that, you know, if you're going to record an orchestra, you might as well use everybody that's in there.
Yeah.
There's no point leaving anybody out. Let's make sure you got the timps do something and the piatti do something and everybody and the glockenspiel does something and everybody does something, you know, and the guy who plays a triangle does something, you know. I feel like you need to make sure that everybody's got stuff to do. Otherwise it's a waste.
Yeah, no, fair enough. No, it's interesting. I mean, it's a slight. I mean, I'm not classically trained or anything like that. I mean, I'm a bit nerdy about music, as you probably tell. But is the approach to having a theme on a certain instrument different than having it on like because an Amalur, you obviously that theme is played on different voices throughout the whole thing. You can hear that throughout the thing, which is really interesting. But like, there's also the other approach, which I don't know what the term for it is, but the kind of like Peter and the Wolf approach, where each instrument represents a character or a thing. Is that something that you approach with at all, or is it can they work together, or do you sort of like ever think, right, this is a character, this character is this instrument, or do you just think the theme itself represents a character or an area or something like that?
I think it can work like that, but I don't think it did in that game. I
Yeah.
feel like it's just you just you know I feel like you want to pass it around all the orchestras so it stays interesting, right? You know, if everyone's got to play at some point or together on different connotations of it. You know, I think it's important. And I think that I really like the whole leitmotif thing, and I think sometimes these days it gets a bit lost in the movie stuff. Like people don't.
Yeah.
It gets very. You know, I'm a little bit tired of going to see a big blockbuster movie where it sounds epic and fantastic, but totally unremarkable. And you walk out, you can't remember. No, it's been a big bombastic experience, but I'm like, I can't remember any tunes of it. Like I'm old school. I like to hear something I can remember. I want to hear da 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 da. That's all you need to do, right? That's enough. You know what that is. You know where you are. You know, so I like that approach. And so, but I feel like sometimes these days people sometimes shy away from it. It's often the directors that are asking not to do it,
Okay.
and sometimes they say, "Well, you know, I don't want to browbeat the audience and lead them along." And sometimes I feel like that's what music's for, right? It lets you know when you're happy, when you're sad, when you're scared, or whatever. And I feel like that's what it's there for. It's not leading the. It's given. I feel like the pictures tell the story. The music tells you how to feel.
That's interesting. Yeah, I watched I don't know if you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy 3 yet, but
Mm.
it's really in a good way it's jarring. But at the end of the film, there's like a short piece where the Guardians of the Galaxy theme plays, and it's really
Right.
jarring when it happens. I mean, obviously you got in that film's different because it's got the licensed music, but there is that sort of big bombastic score, and then all of a sudden, right at the end, it really sort of takes you out and it shocks you because it's like I've not heard that repeated throughout the film. It's really, I totally agree with you there because it's all that sort of very, and Hans Zimmer's great, but Hans Zimmer has that sort of like ambient. It's not just Hans Zimmer, but it's people like that, isn't it? You know, it's a very ambient sort of thing. It doesn't really seem to.
Yeah, no, I do feel like in Hollywood, it's definitely it's that's changed. I feel like in games, it's still like the last bastion of melody in some respects, and I do feel like people expect to hear a tune that they can sing forever a lot of the time. And so I do feel like games. I mean, but certainly look at Mario Rabbids, the two Mario Rabbids games. I mean, David Soliani, who's the creative director, is very keen on. You know, and I did sort of start off Sparks of Hope writing maybe more less melodic music, and he didn't like it straight away. He's like, I don't like that. And even a piece of music that I wrote that he didn't like it, I put a tune on it, and it became his favorite piece in the game.
Okay.
And he didn't like it at all. He was like, "No, I don't want it. I don't want it." I just thought I put a tune on it. He was like, "Oh my god, this is," and it shows you how
Yeah.
some people, you know, it works like that. And so, you know, I just feel like I I'll stand by the fact that the average person in the street walking to work in the morning wants to whistle something to
Yeah.
themselves, right, or hum, and I kind of feel like there's not too many ambient pieces of music that make it to number one on the charts, like, or ever, never, right?
No.
If Lady Gaga's written a great tune, or Metallica's written a great tune, then that's what for me, that's what I like. I don't want
Yeah.
to hear. I'm not whistling the ambient tracks. I'm just not going to melody to whistle, right? You know, and I just feel the average person in the street likes to hear a good tune.
It's interesting as well with games because I mean, obviously you're on the inside of this, but like there's a few games I played as a kid. So like there's Abe's Odyssey on PlayStation 1, and that's a very ambient soundtrack. There's very little going on there, and when you're playing the game, it gives you the tension, and you feel really, you know, like you're frightened basically. But I tried listening to it on its own, and it's very well written, but it's like you don't get the same feel without the game going there. Whereas like something like obviously your stuff and a lot of other stuff now, you can listen to it without the game, and it's just as good in a lot of respects, I think. So is that something you aim for? Is it like do you aim more for whether someone can listen to it independently from the game, or do you aim more for how it works in the game? Or
So both, but I mean,
yeah.
I go as far as I can to make sure that it's something memorable in the stuff that I write. I really try hard. I may not always achieve it, but I try super hard to do that. And I always feel like, you know, I went to see Mission Impossible, the new one last night, and you know, and like there's bits in that you can definitely remember. And like when you hear the music back, I remember the scene. You know, and I like that. I like to, you know, to listen to stuff and remember that stuff, like in the Matrix or whatever it is, you know, Harry Potter or Jaws, or I don't know, you know, all these great movies that stand the test of time, like Indiana Jones, you know.
Yeah.
When you hear the theme, you can or there's certain parts of like in the map room in the first Indiana Jones movie, it's such a memorable bit. And that's just chords, but it's such a memorable section. You can't hear that without remembering that scene in your head, you know. So I like to do that, and I'll go as far as I'm allowed to go down that path, you know.
Yeah.
I don't. You don't need to have wall-to-wall melody. Not, of course you don't. It needs to be bits where it is just ambient. But I feel like when it comes to that on-the-money moment, I like to have, you know, like I've always, like when I was doing the Kings of Amalur, John Williams, you know, I kind of realized that he has these big thematic moments. Say in a big battle sequence when the TIE fighters are all, you know, that, and then you'll hear Luke's theme and Darth Vader's theme. But in between it, it's got this really exciting music that doesn't really get in the way. I feel like it's kind of treading water music, even though it's super elaborate and very hard. But it really keeps the tension up.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the moment, it's banging with the theme, and then back to the treading water music, and then in with the theme, back to the treading water music. And I feel like that's a great way to do it. So you've got your moments where you really hit people between the eyes, and then you're back to creating the tension, creating the excitement, and then back to the theme, you know. So that's what I like to do that.
That's the best example of that I can think of with John Williams is in Star Wars is the asteroid theme in Empire Strikes Back, because there's the bit where obviously I think I've seen that film so many times where the Falcon comes out and then the main melody plays, but then before that it's loads of like timpani and drums and stuff like that. So that's interesting. But
yeah,
really really good. I think that's something that you just got my brain thinking now. That's something that happens in Back to the Future as well. In the third one, where the theme on the train, going along the train, and of course it's quite interesting that because the train's only going about 30 miles an hour in real life. Obviously, it's going faster than that in the film, but if you watch that without the music, it's quite boring. But that sort of build up with the symbols and stuff like that, and eventually when the big money moment happens, the Back to the Future theme plays, and it's I've never really thought of it like that actually.
And there's lots of little motifs in Back to the Future apart from the main. Da, da, da. That's what you need to hear, right? You're right there, right?
Yeah.
You know? But there's a little, he does a little celeste thing on top that just pops up all the time. And I mean, I went to see John Williams at Hollywood Bowl last Saturday. You know, he does that every year. He does it 3 nights at Hollywood Bowl. It's a fantastic thing. We all go, and he's tremendous, right? But sometimes he's done this thing where in Indiana Jones, I think it's 2, it goes back to young Indy in the caves, and I think it's that one. And he does this thing where they show that little section of the movie where he's in the caves, a young guy, and he gets into a train or all the rest of it. And he does it without the music. He just stands there and he play it, and then he goes right, and then he plays it with it. He plays the music live along with it, and the difference is stark. Like that. The first watching it, he's into the kind of circus train, getting through the animals, all that kind of thing. As a young kid like that, it does not very much, and then you put it with the music, it's just infinitely better, you know.
It probably sounds really pretentious, but is it like having it as another character in the film? I mean, is that probably like the music itself is a character? I mean, that's
it's certainly John Williams scores. I feel like the old school. I mean, I feel like the old school guys for definite. Like you think about there's a thing on YouTube where guys wander around the streets saying to people, "Can you hum this? Can you hum that?" And he says, "Can you hum Harry Potter? Can you hum Indiana Jones? Can you hum Star Wars? Yeah. Can you hum Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Nobody. Can you hum another hero? No. You know, and it's a bit like, why is that? Like Marvel's got this gigantic gazillion franchise that dwarfs everything else in the world, right? And for me, the one thing I can remember from all the Marvel movies is the Avengers thing.
Yeah.
Because that's Alan Silvestri, who's wrote Back to the Future.
That's the future, yeah.
And so he's an old school guy. He knows how to write a tune that sticks in your head forever, right? And I feel like it's a missed. I can probably remember the Spider-Man from G. Kino probably a bit, but I feel like I can't remember anything else from any of those movies really. And I kind of feel it's a bit of a shame, you know.
Yeah, they did it in the trailer for Spider-Man. Well, there's so many Spider-Man films now, isn't there? But they did it. I think it was the second one after the Avengers came out. I think. I've lost track of all the Marvel films. But they in the trailer at the end they played the 60s Spider-Man
Yeah, yeah,
bit,
yeah.
and that really, when you watch the trailer, it's like wow, it really gets you hyped up for it. But it wasn't in the
Yeah.
film, so it's a bit like
No,
okay, so maybe there's some litigious thing going on. I don't know, but
no, I
it's a
don't think so.
shame.
But I think Giacchino's. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but if I heard it, I'd know it. So I feel like he's it's a decent job there. But I feel like for me, it's a bit like you know, almost gigantic. I mean, I feel like people might get tired of melody. I don't know. Just for me, I like to hear a theme I can remember. So
Yeah.
I hear the Superman theme. You're right there with John Williams and Christopher Reeve. It's a fantastic. I do think that Hans Zimmer did a good job on the Man of Steel theme. I think that is memorable and it's very noble. And I think it suits the character well. But I just feel like it's few and far between these days. For me, I don't like. I mentioned Impossible last night. When you hear
Yeah.
yeah, it's just that's Lalo Schifrin from the 70s, right? Like, and it's still a fantastically valid theme right now. So,
It's my first ringtone. That.
well, no, it's such a great piece of music, right? So I just think how much that has embellished those movies. Just that music is just spectacular,
Okay, brilliant. All right, well, I'm conscious we're getting towards time. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but did you want to plug anything or mention anything else that you got going on? I know that in the games it's difficult to do that sometimes, but
You never can you? I mean,
no.
I just got an indie movie come out just called Murder Syndicate, directed by Michael Matteo Rossi, who's a good friend of mine. So I just done that. That's just come out about a few weeks ago. So the soundtrack to that's up on Spotify. But it's quite a synthy, more of an ambient soundtrack, which isn't really in my wheelhouse. But I really like. I've done the last few movies with him, and I really enjoyed doing stuff like that. So it's been good fun, messing around with synths. But I will say, so the film festival in Ghent happens in October, the World Soundtrack Awards, and so last year the score for The King's Daughter, the movie I did with John Coda and Joseph Metcalf, that stars Pierce Brosnan and William Hurt, won last year.
Right.
The people's votes. That's pretty great. So this year, it's the first year they're including video games in that film. So they are encouraging people to go and vote. So if I can beg your listeners, watchers, to go to the World Soundtrack Awards website, you're registered to vote, and you'll get an email back, and then you can vote. You can vote for Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. It's the first time they've got games awards in that festival. So it would be awesome if we won or even got nominated.
Okay, if you send me a link to that, I'll put it in the description as well if you want.
Yeah.
If anyone watches.
Yeah, let's do that.
Right, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time. Nice to talk to you. I really enjoyed this. Actually, I look forward to it all day. Actually, I mean, it was different for you because you're obviously just woken up compared to me anyway. Right. But thanks for your time and speak again. Take care. Thank you.
All right, Jack. Give me a shout anytime.
Thank you. Take care. Bye now.
Cheers.
Cheers.